Good morning. This committee and budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudications will now come to order. Notice of the public hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets via electronic format on April the 17th, with a second notice provided on the 17th. Notice of the hearing is also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. We have a number of agencies that are on today. As we begin this budget process for fiscal year 2019, I want to thank everyone for being here today. I understand that several of the agencies that I've requested to be here today are not traditionally part of this process, but you may be aware that this legislature created Chapter 1, Title A, Chapter 1A, Title 5 of Guam Code Annotated relative to government reorganization in Public Law 34-87. The intent of this policy was to prioritize the expenditure of limited government revenue to these agencies with what has been identified as higher priority numbers, thereby creating government savings and promoting increased efficiency whenever possible. As the committee begins to consider and review the budgetary needs of the government of Guam for the fiscal year 2019, it is imperative that this community fully comprehend that your agency's requirements for funding from general fund or special funds appropriated by the legislature or lack thereof. Prior to this hearing, I sent a letter to each agency requesting your presence today, asking you to provide testimony answering specific questions relative to your agency's missions, how you measure the achievement of your missions, and other relevant matters. For the autonomous agencies, these are considered committee hearings because I am fully aware that you do not submit budgets to this body for review and approval. Rather, you have respective governing bodies that hold that responsibility. Though this may be the case, your agencies were identified in the government organization statute, and I want to give you the opportunity to inform the public with your answers. For the executive branch line agencies, though I'm aware of the appropriation levels various agencies requested in 2019 executive budget requests, your responses to the items are for the benefit of the public. I want the public to understand that for these line agencies, the governor submitted two options. Option 1 assumed a business privilege tax that increased 2%, whereas the other option assumed no business privilege tax increase or sales tax increase. Please note that while your testimony to the committee should be to specifically answer these questions, I have scheduled numerous agencies to testify today. As such, please limit your in-person presentation to no more than 15 minutes with a copy of your written testimony due no later than the close of business Wednesday, April the 18th. Thank you. I guess we'll start with Gura.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Speaker, members of the Appropriations and Adjudication Committee. My name is Michael Duenas. I am the Executive Director for the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority. My testimony is very brief, and I will read it. Dear Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to submit our point of view on reorganizing the government of Guam. The Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority was established over 55 years with the purpose of pursuing housing and community development funds from various federal government programs. GURA has had minimal impact on the revenues of the government of Guam, relying on federal programs to fund our operations. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development provided funds to develop 750 rental dwelling units under the public housing program. GURA receives over $4 million in operating subsidy from HUD to manage and operate the public housing program. The Housing Choice Voucher Program provides over $30 million annually to cover the cost of rental assistance to over 2,400 families. The U.S. Department of Agriculture provided a $2 million loan to develop Gumat Tranquilidad, and the HUD multifamily program provides $700,000 in annual rental assistance to 49 elderly families through its project-based vouchers. GURA administers its Community Development Block Grant Program, the Home Investment Partnership Grant Program, the Emergency Solutions Grant Program, and the Continuum of Care Homeless Grants on behalf of the Government of Guam. GURA's cost of administering these programs are directly paid by these grants. Not all communities nor all residents qualify for the programs we administer at GURA. These programs are targeted to benefit low and moderate income families, the elderly, adults with disabilities, and the homeless. However, these programs improve the quality of life for our targeted families and indirectly enhance life for the larger community. The laws and rules that govern these programs are esoteric in nature and require as much as 5 years to master. As these federal programs evolve, GURA will adapt to the changes as we have for the last 55 years. You'll find that GURA's 95 employees, management team, and Board of Commissioners strive to implement these programs in conformance with the laws and regulations promulgated by HUD and USDA. I commend the legislature for pursuing this much-needed review of the Government of Guam's organizational structure. The committee will find that GURA is fulfilling its mission in an effective manner at minimal or no cost to the Government of Guam. I have enclosed the answers to the committee's questions regarding core missions, performance metrics, and revenue sources for your review. Respectfully, Michael Duenas, Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Duenas. And just for the record, for clarity, you received no budgetary appropriation from the general fund.
That is correct, sir.
I just wanted to make that clear so that people understand that this committee has really no jurisdiction over you. And your budget is approved by your Board of...
That's correct. The Board of Commissioners approves our operating budget.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? No. Thank you. Guam Housing Corporation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My testimony is equally brief, and I will read it into the record at this time. For the record, I am Chris Duenas, the president of the Guam Housing Corporation. Buenas and Hafaday, Speaker Benjamin J.F. Cruz. We are in receipt of your letter dated April 12, 2018, on the notice of committee hearing scheduled for Thursday, April 19, 2018. Pursuant to this, Guam Housing Corporation is providing the following testimony for information and further discussion. Guam Housing Corporation, in its core mission, continues to provide opportunities for first-time homeowners in the low to moderate income under the First-Time Homeowners Assistance Program, as well as assisting potential homeowners needing consideration for mortgage loans at higher risk. Additionally, GHC has provided additional public services to address homeless population on Guam by designating 5 rental units as transitional shelters. With the recent release of its annual audit by the Office of Public Accountability, the OPA, and the financial firm of Ernst & Young, GHC continues its commitment to excellence in service to help the people of Guam. The OPA commended GHC on its 5th consecutive year in receiving unmodified, clean opinion on its fiscal year FY 2017 audit from independent auditors Ernst & Young, and without material weaknesses and significant deficiencies in its report on compliance and internal controls. This designation affirms the positive review of GHC operations and financial practices. Guidance and policy conformity is overseen by Guam Housing Corporation's Board of Directors to include the approval of our annual budget. As an autonomous agency, Guam Housing Corporation derives its revenues from interest on loan receivables, rental income from housing inventory at 3 sites, and most recently, administrative fees from the First-Time Homeowners Assistance Program. Funds are allocated to the capitalization for new loans, maintenance and repairs to housing inventory, salaries and benefits, retirees, supplemental, COLA and insurance payments, interest on bond payables, rent, professional services, contractual services, equipment, and other miscellaneous expenses. Our corporation remains focused in providing services for the low to moderate income families and will continue our efforts to provide affordable housing for all of our people who are striving to reach the Guamanian dream of home ownership. I look forward to additional discussion and testimony at this scheduled hearing. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact our office, or of course I'm here in person and ready to discuss Guam Housing Corporation with this august body. Dankalun Nasidu Usmasi, Christopher M. Duenas, President, Guam Housing Corporation.
Thank you very much, Senator. And again, just for the record, Guam Housing Corporation does not receive an appropriation in the FY19 or any of the budgets of the government of Guam. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Speaker. As a matter of fact, with legislation that was introduced for the first-time homeowners program, Guam Housing Corporation actually was the one to initiate at the rate of $500,000 that program when it was envisioned to be a legislative appropriation, but we were happy to get that off the ground. And so yes, we received no funds from the general fund, and we are completely self-sufficient.
Thank you very much. Does any Senator Wick? Sure. Thank you. And after you finish, you're excused. I understand that many of you are very busy, so please, there's no need to stay.
Okay.
After you finish.
Yeah, we certainly have our team available.
Yeah,
but
I know.
Thank you, Senators, and we appreciate this opportunity once again, Mr. Speaker.
Is there a representative from, I guess we'll take GEPA?
Good morning, Speaker and members of the committee. I've provided a lengthy written testimony, which I'm not going to read all. I just give an abbreviated testimony, or verbal testimony. One of the things that I would like to point out now that I have the floor in front of the legislature or this committee is the concern of our ranking as Guam EPA as a 321. Our concern is, and it's mirrored by the federal agency, US EPA, that if you think, or if the legislature would like to combine us being a regulatory agency really puts a lot of restrictions on who we could be combined with or associated with in the eyes of the feds, mainly due to the idea that if there's a director or someone that has conflicting issues with a regulatory agency and a current agency that it's being regulated, that could cause problems in the future. So I'd just like to point that out, sir. Okay, and then we do not receive any funds from the general fund. We have our special funds that we're working with Senator Tom Addett to try to have all as revolving funds, which we'll be providing you the package very soon, sir. And the reason that is again the federal government who gives us the autonomy to run the programs here. They see that as program income, which means to them and to us that if we, through our primacy, we are generating the funds as an agency, and because of that, they'd like to be able to know that the agency controls the funds. So the concern, there's 4 funds that currently are non-lapsing, and so those funds they would like to see as revolving funds so that future legislatures do not withhold significant money back from the money that we generate as an agency. And again, that package will be given to you. This has been outlined by the audit that US EPA has received, and we'll provide that as well. And I'll say to that, sir, I'm here for any questions or anything you guys want to talk about. So,
Your amount, your operating funds come from federal funds and special funds, right?
correct.
And special funds that are statutorily created. some of
Correct.
them.
Correct, sir.
And so they are part of the general fund budget. And so in the general fund, we do, in the appropriation for whatever FY year 19 or whatever, the legislature does appropriate that to EPA. But those are funds that your agency generates as part of your mandate.
That is correct, sir.
And you have an oversight board?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Do you have an oversight board?
Yes, we have a policy board, correct.
And I know I probably shouldn't raise this at this point, but I was accosted by a person a few days ago and said that the truth be told, maybe you don't remember it, but there was a time when the general fund was actually providing money to the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, but we've since stopped doing that. And so I want to thank you for generating enough funds yourself so that you don't need our meager funds. But I just wanted to make it clear that the Guam Environmental Protection Agency is, number one, federally funded, and then it has its special funds that it generates that is statutorily appropriated to them.
That's correct, sir.
Senator.
So I notice, I guess, from these special funds, what's being appropriated is about $970,000
That's correct,
for
sir.
FY19. But the bulk of the funds that Guam EPA uses for its operations is actually federal.
That's correct.
Correct,
3.2 million, sir.
Yeah, and I was kind of confused because when I was looking at the budget document, there is a column there that shows, well, it says federal match, but it doesn't show any figures.
Right.
So it kind of gives the impression that Guam EPA operates on $971,000 a year.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of curious if the agency was given instructions that you don't have to fill out the federal portion.
Not that I understand, sir. Maybe that was an oversight on my part. We could easily put that in. Again, we received annually and again approximately 3.2 million from all the different program funding from US EPA. Again, because we run out in consolidated grant, all the money loses its identity once it hits the Guam grant. And so we do get about 3.2, and we just got confirmation that for FY19 we will also be receiving that amount, if not a little bit more this year.
Yeah, so I was just very curious why, that funding information was not provided in the budget document.
Okay.
I certainly would like to, see what it is. Now, are these funds, do you have to apply for the grants annually such that you don't really know how much you might be getting, or is it kind of like a rollover every year?
For the consolidated grant, what it is say, for instance, you have the pesticide program managed by US EPA. So in collaboration with Guam EPA's pesticide program, they determine how much money we would need to fulfill our mandates, and then they would provide that money. And again, because we run on the consolidated grant system, that money loses the term pesticide program money and goes into just one lump sum for the discretion of the agency to apply the money where it's most needed. And a perfect example of that would be like the solid waste program that Guam EPA runs. They receive 0 to no funding from US EPA. So all solid waste mandates that Guam has, that has to be funded locally, so to speak. And so even though we do not tap into the general fund, we reallocate some of the other program funds to be able to manage the solid waste program on Guam.
Okay. I guess I'll just have, I'll send a separate request to the agency to ask for a listing of these.
We'll definitely provide that to you, sir, and
Okay.
sorry for the confusion on that.
Yeah.
I think what it was when it said the matching funds, we were looking for like what Guam puts in to match corresponding to what we put in, whereas the money that they provide is what they provide, whether Guam provides matching funds or not. I think that's where the confusion was with us. But it can be, it's easily addressed, sir.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Mr. Leongoro, for joining us this morning. Speaking about fiscal year 19 and the proposed $971,000 that Senator Addo was just referring to, I was looking over the numbers and it looks like you're cutting your budget about $148,000, which is a 13% cut from our previous fiscal year. And you're cutting operational costs, but there is an increase in personnel services by about $107,000, and you're hiring an additional employee. Is this related to anticipated buildup issues, or what would you say that this increase in personnel costs would be attributed to?
So right now, we're looking to hire more because Guam EPA runs on a 5-year fiscal cycle. The end of the 5-year fiscal cycle is fiscal year 2018. So we're currently in the process of developing our next 5-year cycle. So during the 5 years, money can roll over between 1 and 4, but again, the 5th year, anything unspent has to be given back. So with that being said, some of the things that we can do is ramp up some of our positions with the federal funds, at least for a limited term. That way we can get more accomplished within this last fiscal year. So there's like a 6-month, a 6-month buffer, 6 to 9 month buffer after the end of the 5-year fiscal cycle that we can expend all the money. So that's where we can hire a LTA for a year to help us accomplish some of our goals and objectives in our work plan.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Yeah. And I know you have a lot of programs under your belt. You were just mentioning the pesticide program, and we know you're responsible for monitoring our drinking water, hazardous waste, and other things. So I really want to thank the team at EPA for taking care of that for us. And I know there was pushback several years ago to kind of collaborate with other agencies on illegal dump sites.
Correct.
And so I wanted to ask you, is there a plan in place? What's been kind of discussed on that score? And in addition to that, it's my understanding that maybe about 10 years ago, there was money allocated and cameras were purchased by EPA. And I just wanted to know, they were supposed to be installed back in 2013, so I wanted to know if that happened and if they've been effective.
Okay, so my understanding when the cameras were purchased, they were deployed. There are some things, they were basically trail cameras that butterflies, leaves waving, basically would enable the camera to automatically take these pictures. So there were some kinks we needed to work out as far as trying to eliminate, because all our memory cards were being filled up with pictures of leaves waving or birds or butterflies flying. And so we were working on that. Unfortunately, when we did a cleanup in Jigo around the production wells, we had stationed 2 cameras up, and unbelievably, one of them, someone actually scaled the tree or the power pole and stole the camera. So we're down to 1. So we're still trying to figure out how to deploy these cameras where they can't be seen, because it's, the camera faces one way, and if someone wants a trail camera to either go hunting or to do whatever they want to do with it, if they climb from the backside of the pole or the tree, then there's no way for us to identify, because most of the times, most of the locations we would deploy these cameras is, not a regularly place that people go to, dimly lit, things of that nature. That's where the normal places of illegal dumps are. As far as coordinating, as I mentioned, we worked with the Island Beautification Task Force, we worked with DPW, we've worked with GWA to try to address some of these cleanup sites, which includes, again, as mentioned, we did 2 production well areas where dumps were right around our drinking water wells. So yes, there is a collaboration ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. Leon-Guerrero. Okay, 2 other quick questions.
Sure.
So I know you attended the University of Guam Center for Island Sustainability Conference, and one of the suggestions that was brought up at that time was they're having, it sounds like, pretty good success in the CNMI by decreasing their fines for illegal dumping. And so I kind of wanted to pick your brain about that and think about, apparently what they were saying is this fine is really excessive at $200, and so the people that are issuing the fine, they don't want to stick that to maybe somebody who they might know, or but if the fine was a little bit less, then there would be a better opportunity for us to get that money. If it was maybe $50, and then you increase the fines if there is repeat offenses.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
I'm totally in line with doing something of that nature, with the caveat that if someone is a repeat offender, or maybe even the first offender, that there's some way that gets out to the public. Because I think that's going to be the hindrance more than the fine or fee would be them publicly being notified that these guys are actually being caught dumping trash illegally. I mean, I'd equate it to like the DUI report that the PDN or the other newspapers used to do. I think that may be a solution more than monetary fines. Though monetary fines will not hurt our agency, it would only help. But I think it's the public embarrassment of being caught may deter a lot of this illegal dumping.
Great, thank you. And my last one, I had sent you a letter late last year, I believe in November, and then you responded in December, just following up on the rules and regulations on the bottle bill, on the bottle reimbursement program. So what is the next step that needs to take place for the ball to get rolling on that one?
Since I've taken this position, I've looked at the drafted bottle bill for Guam. I have some concerns. Well, one, we still haven't gotten DOD's total buy-off on it yet. But the other concerns I have with it is, I went to school in Portland, Oregon, and that was in the mid-'80s, and they had a bottle recycling bill, and it was quite effective. It's still quite effective now. We patterned ourselves after Hawaii, which I hear Hawaii's having some issues with how they're conducting their bottle recycling, and so what I had planned to do is revisit that with the staff and just take a look and see where it has been really successful for and shown longevity versus maybe a state that just started, and that's what I'm looking to do. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leon-Guerrero. Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Leon-Guerrero. Just wanted to follow up on, so in 2018, there was an appropriation to EPA where they listed $1,431,000 of special funds that were going to go for operations of EPA. But in addition to that, they listed special appropriations, for example, the beach monitoring.
Okay.
So an additional $108,000 from the Tourist Attraction Fund. There are 5 of these. Could you just please tell us how effective is this appropriation for the beach monitoring?
Okay, so the beach money coming out of the Tourist Attraction Fund, basically it helps Guam EPA conduct, I believe it's 42 beach samplings a week.
Samplings?
So, yeah,
this is what you use for the samplings.
Correct.
Okay.
We go out, take water samples at 42 beaches. Is it 42? 43, excuse me, I'm sorry. 43 beaches throughout the island of Guam, both north, south, east, and west.
Monthly? Is that
weekly.
monthly?
Weekly.
So
yes.
weekly, 43 beaches are sampled. Okay,
correct.
thanks.
And so what we do is ensure that that the E. coli is at proper levels, and if they are, then we notify the public that they'd be at risk, possible risk, in swimming or fishing in those waters.
So we've seen your notices. Are we getting any closer to the perennial polluted beaches being
So that's a very
remedied, I guess?
Yes, that's a very complex and layered question. Good question, but very complex and layered answer. So one of the things we're looking at is the possible sources of the contamination. So again, working with DPW and Guam Water Works Authority, we're trying to see like stormwater overflow. One, if there's cross connections with the sewer lines, and two, if it is just a stormwater overflow, and if it is just things that are being flushed into the marine environment from our roads. We've actually put out a RFP that is now a contract to see what best management practices can be done on Guam at one of our stormwater overflow discharge points. So we hope to figure that out with our contractor on if there's ways that we can reduce. So one of the beaches that continually has higher levels of advisories is we have a contract to try to figure out what type of best management practices can be done to reduce the level going into the marine environment.
All right. I thought I heard a couple of years ago that there was a new stormwater management rules and regs. Is that right?
Well, so currently US EPA is trying to address and issue a MS4 permit, which basically is it's a sewer stormwater separate systems. So that's the four municipal sewer stormwater separate systems. And basically what that will do is ensuring that there's no crossover between sewer lines and the stormwater discharges, as well as also identifying if there is potential from upland source influence in the marine environment. So again,
so those are being addressed, but were there any local stormwater rules being proposed? No.
At this point, no.
Okay. And then what about there's this $2,931,000 from the recycling revolving fund.
Correct.
What are you using that for?
Well, currently, this legislative board for this year and next year, I think, is even proposing that $2.2 million goes to the Mayor's Council, which basically does not leave very much for us to oversee. I know by statute that we have money to...
All right, I'm sorry, just a second, because so there's two provisions here. One is number 5 that says 2.9
right.
to EPA from the recycling revolving fund, and then number, that's A, and then B says, I see.
Right.
So, okay, so 2.1 of that goes to the Mayor's Council.
Correct. Well, this year it was 2.2, so...
in
2018, 2.2 has been signed off to the Mayor's Council already.
All right, so you entered into the MOU with the Mayor's Council?
Correct. In fact, my understanding is each village mayor has been appropriated from that a certain amount of money to carry out recycling efforts as well as removal of abandoned vehicles and white goods.
All right, so how do you gauge the effectiveness of that? What is your report so far?
Being the first year, we've not gotten any direct feedback from the mayors yet. I did have interactions with the Ganya mayor and the Tumani mayor about some of the money that they've used. And they talked about, I think the Ganya mayor towing 8, if not more, abandoned vehicles off government easements to a recycling company. The Tumani mayor yesterday just informed me that she's used some of the money to remove white goods from cleanup that Guam EPA will be doing on Friday in celebration of Earth Day, which is on Sunday. So those are just some of the things I've heard, but we've not actually gotten any reports from them yet.
Time that we were discussing this appropriation last budget cycle, I thought EPA was considering, so what is your position this year on managing this money themselves?
So we are,
or managing that that pickup of white goods or abandoned vehicles. Yes.
So part of the statute for the Recycling Revolving Fund requires Guam EPA to come up with the regs, and I mentioned this, and I told you guys about 10 minutes ago, we're in the precipice of finalizing it. Unfortunately, that's still the same answer now. We're having not issues, but just discussions with the Attorney General's office on what can and shouldn't be and how it should be written out. Much of the staff feels it's done, and we just need the concurrence from the AG's office, and which we're working on currently.
All right, thank you. And then finally, we've been in discussions, and
Yes.
I want to commend you on your follow-up on the Agent Orange testing. It seems like you are working with the US EPA and the Department of Defense, or the Joint Region Marianas, for testing that Joint Region is funding. And so they pretty much dictated the scope, I guess, with your concurrence and the US EPA's concurrence. And I guess if you could just tell us, I want to know at the end of that testing, which is not comprehensive, it's very limited, what are your plans? And what if the results are negative versus if the results are positive? Does EPA have any plans, and does EPA have any funds to do its own independent testing?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So we had the good fortune of having an individual from US EPA who is our technical guidance or expert, who's conducted a lot of Agent Orange or the rainbow herbicides removals or assessments and removals, not only through continental US but also in Vietnam, where it was rampantly used during the war, and so he's got a lot of background in that. So he's our technical expertise. So we've had him in all of the QAP, Quality Assurance Plan, and the work plan, and we just the intent that we had with them, with the DoD and with the assistance from US EPA, is to see if the constituents of Agent Orange, or one of the constituents from Agent Orange, it can be found in the sample locations. Because it was DoD, and we request to sample within the fence line. Prior to that, we seeked out affidavits from veterans about the likelihood of locations of where it was applied, or where they remembered it was being applied, which included the fill farm, fence lines, runway, pipeline, both for Anderson and Naval Base Guam. And so we had said, let's go with the fuel farm, and where maybe have been the storage area. So the hope for DoD is that if there's nothing there, and there's absolutely nothing that then that'll confirm it's never been used. In discussions with us in US EPA, that is not our demarcation line. We will, if we feel, with any of the information, if nothing shows up, we have the authority to either ourselves look at it, if I have to move around money to continue doing an assessment investigation at other locations, if we don't have DoD's cooperation, then we will try to figure something out. And US EPA has indicated that they would help where they could. So like this current sampling that's supposed to start next week, to ensure that DoD's lab is producing the correct numbers, US EPA has provided a nominal amount of money, but we're getting our split samples and sending it to their lab to confirm what results are there. So we are doing things to ensure that the sampling is true, and we can take from it what it shows. But again, if it shows that there's nothing, that doesn't mean the investigation is over, by no means.
All right. I had also asked you about the soil that's being removed as they repair or replace the fuel line, and I'm wondering, where does that soil go? According to the veterans' testimony, that's where they remember spraying herbicides, and so I'm just wondering, if in case it is contaminated, if it's not being tested right now, are there any plans to test that, and where does it go?
Right. So again, the initial purpose of this sampling is to show if there is a presence or no non-presence in likelihood of areas inside the fence line. If that comes up negative, then we can look at some of the historical sampling to see if there's anything done. We can, and the intent is to look at the pipeline, but as we discussed, because they're putting in a new pipeline and disturb the ground that exists, and unfortunately for the constituent of Agent Orange or the rainbow herbicides, air and sunlight degrades the constituent very rapidly. In chemistry literature, it talks about 30 days, which our technical expertise says, even though it says that, he's done enough work, OJT experience, that doesn't necessarily happen. But that doesn't mean, say, areas at Naval Base Guam, the fence line, or even Anderson's fence line, that we can't continue to sample and look for it. So it's, for me, Senator, let's find out what the investigation shows first, and then let's take the second step. We have some contingency plans that we have talked about internally and with the US EPA, but let's work with what our standards are showing first.
All right, well, I want to thank you for all your efforts in that regard, and thank you for your answers, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning,
Good morning.
Mr. Walter. I do have a question about the bottle bill. I know that some of the challenges is to get it started is perhaps a lack of funding to initiate the program. What is being done to address that specific challenge?
Okay, so
I'm sorry, just to help a little, or not to help, but just to add on a little bit. You said that you modeled it similar to Hawaii's program, and so some of the initiatives within the region, I understand that they started to create a fund and charging the distributors a certain amount before they could actually implement the program. So they kind of put in a reserve to help implement that program to get it started. And so can you just tell us a little bit about that and where we are at?
And I think that's, again, this was done prior to my taking this position. So I'm speaking from what I've heard during the working hours. I think that's the biggest issue that DOD is having right now, is having us charge up front to their importation of drinks and whatnot, versus and not knowing if it's actually going to go back to their community subject to that nature. It would be better if I respond to that question with the staff input a little bit more than what I'm doing now.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you're about the DOD charges, you're right, because we go shop on base, and if we're going to, I guess, redeem the value of the bottle, some of the challenges we'll face that it's not exactly going into the fund that was allocated for it, because DOD is a separate, and you don't have a checks and balances in place to monitor what DOD brings in and sends out, right? Okay, so how do we fix that, right? and so if you have, it's just something for you perhaps to take to the staff or your team, and and then let's tighten the ropes on DOD.
Yes, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to follow up on the Vice Speaker's question regarding that $2.2 million that's allocated to the Mayor's Council.
Correct.
Just to be clear, though, when that amount of money is allocated over to the Mayor's Council, the expenditure of that, is that in coordination with EPA?
So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So we had to approve their plan that they put forth on how they're allowed to spend it, and we did, and that resulted in the MOU being signed by both myself, the Mayor's Council, the Governor, and the AG's office. Now the trick that or not the trick, but the issue I have somewhat is you've basically, when you've done that, you turn Guam EPA into almost an accounting, instead of being a regulatory firm or agency. Now we almost have to manage how the Mayor's Council spends the money, and we're not really built to manage. I mean, we can do it, but the way it's set up now is now we have to provide oversight for spending by the Mayor's Council, which I don't know exactly how much authority we actually have to tell them you can or cannot. You know, of course, we already agreed to the plan and how they can spend it, but if they don't do it, I don't know what authority we have to tell them, you know, you have to give the money back. I'm not sure where that lies, and maybe the legislature can explain, or we can talk about that in the future, because I don't know if they exceed their bounds, who can bring them back in.
Okay, yeah, I guess that will have to be looked at. Maybe there should be a requirement for some kind of reporting at the end of a period to see if, in fact, this whole concept is working. Finally, you mentioned something about, for example, one of the mayors wanted to use some of this money to pick up white goods. Now, we know that the Guam Solid Waste Authority, part of their program also is, I think, a subscriber is allowed twice a year, I believe,
Correct.
for a pickup of white goods and bulky waste.
Correct.
So I just want to point that out to make sure that, you know, we're not duplicating, we're not using this money to pay for pickup that could otherwise was already incorporated in the, like, for the tipping fees.
So in discussion with the Tamuning mayor yesterday, the white goods was at a dump site. Again, I reached out to her. I indicated to her that on Friday, the agency was going to do an agency cleanup for Earth Day, which is on Sunday. And that's when she informed me, oh, good, because I just had someone go pick up like 10 or 15 white goods from that illegal dump site. So,
okay, fine.
Yes. So okay. I don't think she had meant it to be that they're picking up from households. What she informed me, again, is from the illegal dump site that we'll be cleaning up, which really helps us because, you know, we don't have that. We can pick up the trash and we're gonna throw it, dispose of it properly, but it's the white goods, the tires, the abandoned vehicles that really cost when you do these cleanups where it can go.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Anybody else? No?
No.
Thank you very much, Leandro.
Thank you.
Leandro.
Thanks, Senators.
Ms. Crisostemo?
Pushing it back. Hafiday, Mr. Speaker, Vice Speaker, Senators. In response to your electronic letter, Mr. Speaker, dated on April 12, 2018, regarding fiscal year 2019 budget hearing, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to answer to the questions below about the Guam Energy Office. There was 3 bullet points in your electronic letter. What is, or the core missions of your agency? How do they serve the taxpayer? What specific metric or metrics do you use to determine that your core mission is being achieved? A brief overview of your agency's funding level for FY 2019 and how these funds are allocated and expended to meet your agency's core mission. First, I'd like to clarify that the Guam Energy Office is not listed to receive any allocation, whether it be general or special revenue funds in the fiscal year 2019 executive budget request by the Office of the Governor. The Guam Energy Office is 100% federally funded for the past 25+ years, with grants available through the Weatherization and Intergovernmental Program Office of the U.S. Department of Energy. Under the federal office, the Guam Energy Office is awarded State Energy Program and Weatherization Assistance Program grant dollars through formula-based allocation annually. The Guam Energy Office built its own office building in the year 2000 with federal dollars. It continues to operate and function utilizing federal dollars to implement grant activities to cover the administrative expenses needed to carry out the grant activities. Second, the Guam Energy Office continues to exist by Executive Order 83-004 signed by Governor Ricardo Berdalio after being abolished by Executive Order 82-24. Although Executive Order 2007-14 stipulates that the Guam Energy Office falls under Guam EPA's supervision, the federal energy officials only recognize Executive Order 83-004, which designates Guam Energy Office as the entity to apply and receive the specific grants stated above. Our core mission is to promote energy efficiency and provide energy conserving solutions, to assist with reducing fossil fuels dependency, to assist with deploying renewable technologies for energy diversification, and to help reduce greenhouse emissions, protect our environment. We serve the taxpayers through the allowable activities and projects funded by the energy grants. The metrics we use to determine whether our mission is being achieved are based by the established grant metrics of the planned activities that we identified and funding we spent to complete those activities. Some of our activities are highlighted below: provide technical support in obtaining energy data, such as fuel cells for consumption and retail price at the pumps, hold workshops, training, and outreach sessions to promote energy efficiency and renewable energy, sponsor educational outreach in schools, such as the annual energy poster and essay contest, weatherize 50 or more eligible low-income households qualified to have replacement of refrigerators, room window air conditioning units, water heaters, and lights to energy-efficient models, including installing smoke carbon dioxide detectors, sealants on windows and doors, and surge plug-in protectors. We are currently preparing our annual grant applications for submission in May and July after receiving notice of the amounts allocated for the upcoming fiscal year. Our fiscal year 2019 budget is estimated to be about $466,818 as of today. And then I listed down a table. Just to let you know that we do, even though we budgeted that, as of today, we expect to see about $500,000 on our budget like we have for 2017. And that's because we are allowed to carry over some of the grant dollars from the previous years if we hit, or where it's still under procurement. So if it's under procurement and the requisitions haven't been turned into purchase orders, so it's obligated in the following year within our cycle period of the grants. So each of our grants are 3-year cycles. They're not the same time, so we have that flexibility. Okay, and then lastly, if there is a need to place the Guam Energy Office under another department, the top management of that proposed department should already be funded by local dollars to prevent disallowable jurisdictions over the energy grants. Also, any local law mandating the Guam Energy Office to perform a specific duty needs to be locally funded to prevent concerns raised by the federal grantors of priority of the grant versus local unfunded mandates. In conclusion, please know that the Guam Energy Office has sufficient federal dollars for fiscal year 2019. Any attempt to change the Guam Energy Office current status needs to be discussed with the grantors for pre-approval prior to the submission of the grant application securing federal dollars. Suzus Masi.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
cooperation and this very succinct explanation of how the Energy Office is operated and that you are federally funded, and even the history going back more than 25 years. So I thank you very much. I think it's very enlightening for the public to receive this information, and hopefully for the committee also. Is there any questions of the committee? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Ms. Lorley. I just wanted to know, in regards to the plug-in vehicle rebate program, can you just talk a little bit about where you at and the implementation and administering it? Because it shows that pursuant to the executive order, the Guam Energy Office is supervised by GEPA. This office is responsible for the administration of all of Guam's energy-related federal programs. Your primary role is to educate the general public on conservation measures and energy efficiency technologies to reduce costs, to include developing, implementing, and administering the plug-in vehicle rebate program. And so can you just talk a little bit about that program and how the money is generated for that program and where we at in?
Okay, that program was, I believe it was authored by Cruz, Senator Cruz, and that was, I believe, given, I think, $200,000 at one time, and then it was reduced by budget office. I don't know. And then it was, and so that money right now, that $58,000 actually is only for rebates. And they're only the residents can apply. As of today, I believe we process only 3 rebates for residents. They are more than 15 or 20 electric vehicles out there, but only residents can apply, not businesses. So we've always get calls from businesses to get a rebate. And it's 10%, no more than 3,000 of the set. So like, for example, right now there's only one brand of electric vehicle, and that is the Nissan Leaf. That is currently available in Guam. That costs about 30 grand. You get a federal tax credit for 7,000, and then you get the Guam local rebate, and that's another 3,000 if you purchase at 30,000. So your car is only going to be 20,000.
So I can purchase an electrical Tesla and I can get up to $10,000 in rebates back?
No, federal is about 7, and then the Guam local rebate is on your purchase price.
Okay.
Up to 10%, no more than 3.
Okay.
So for example, if you buy a demo Tesla and you only bought it for half the price, then we actually work with the dealership. We get a receipt to say how much did you purchase it, and then we tell you this is only what you're going to get when you process your application to us for the rebate.
Okay, very good. And it shows right here that that you put down, there's $58,897, I'm sorry, for the plug-in electrical vehicle rebate, and that goes directly to the consumer.
Yes, yes.
All of it.
Yes. So when that came out, we had to adjust our grant application the following year to address the staff's time to process, because we're 100% federally funded. That includes our time. So if it's something out of we had to, and it would coincide, and so we made it work.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I like your hair. It's nice.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
God bless.
It's a girl thing, Senator.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Crisostomo, and I'm just going to dovetail off of what Senator Nelson was discussing about the electric vehicles and potential for rebates. What are your thoughts about expanding that program to, one, include businesses? Like you had said, several businesses had called and attempted to avail of this program and have been unable to because it needs to be a local resident. So that's one. And two, the potential of expanding it to include hybrid vehicles, because I know that many of our car dealerships on Guam, almost all of them, have hybrid vehicles as part of their fleets. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts are about expanding that, if you think it should just remain electric only for residents only, or if you think that expanding it to include these other vehicles and other businesses maybe might be a good idea.
Senator, to expand it, the law needs to be changed and funding needs to be added in. And then we would just have to go through the AAA, the Guam Energy Office, to change the rules and regulations that we had already established. But that would, I don't know about hybrid. That's been already around for several years. But the one, I believe that the electric vehicles for the commercial should be. Even the government, for example, GPA purchased 2 electric vehicles, and they were kept joking around saying why they can't get a rebate for their electric vehicles, because it's only for residents only, and it's very specific. It even says how long the established resident, it even has a year to be a resident of Guam. So meaning, I believe when I was looking at the law, the military cannot get the electric vehicle rebate.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Mr. Speaker, just one question.
Speaker, I love your tie.
Thank you.
Lord, is there any possibility that your agency, is there any funds available by grant or otherwise for residential installation of solar conversion or solar panels?
You mean for the net metering?
Yes.
Not for funding, yes. Gone are those days of the ARA dollars. And when it was the ARA dollars, we did install solar water heaters for the low-income eligible residents that fell under the Weatherization Assistance Program. We added the ARA dollars there to install some solar water heaters.
All right. All right. Thank you for your...
Thank you very much again, and just for the record, you're all federally funded as of the present day.
Yes, yes. And it would be great if you can identify
No,
general
that's
funds for
quite all
us.
right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
That's a no done deal? Okay. Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Speaker.
you.
Thank you, Senators.